Hi there, a quick wrap for the seed increase, folks. Most of us, when we look at the typical vegetable population we're saving seed on, consider it a one generation cycle. In actual fact, that cycle consists of two distinct generations of plants. The first, the gametophytic generation, is the one we're most familiar with. It begins when a seed germinates and grows up to produce a plant. The second generation, the sporophytic generation, begins when pollen reaches the stigma, prompting the growth of a pollen tube, considered a living plant in its own right. That tube grows down through the porous stigma, reaches the ovule, and creates a seed. Where things get interesting is that the conditions around the plant when that seed formation process is happening has a very powerful impact on the quality of the seed itself, quantity of the seed itself, and, interestingly, on the behavior of the plant that follows. To a degree, we can look at the seed formation process as a powerful intensification of the natural selection process when the conditions during seed formation are less than optimal. That is, for example, when they're blazingly hot and dry, as they typically are in California's central Sierra Nevada foothills. One of the ways those plants, that the next generation of plants is affected can be in very significant fall off in germination percentages. It's not uncommon, for example, to see a crop type or a variety within a crop type that's susceptible to those seed formation conditions to witness a very significant decline in seed germination. Interestingly, where things really get interesting is that there can be a natural tendency to see that those less than optimal conditions can produce a less than optimal progeny. In my experience, that's not actually what happens. The intensified pressure on the seed formation process can produce plants that counterintuitively can perform extremely well or better than the generation that produced them. This is a very peculiar tension I see very little written about or explored, but it's a classic example of how volunteer grassroots initiatives such as ourselves, admittedly lacking in the sophistication that typifies the scientific plant breeding complex, and the vast amount of know-how, technical expertise, and experience that defines the creation of, say, modern hybrid varieties. While we might not have that, one of our superpowers in a sense is that we can fall back more fully on the genius and intelligence of the natural world itself. It's one of the reasons, one of the mantras of the holistic plant breeding movement is develop, grow on, and increase seed on plants in the conditions you hope to grow them in on. Essentially what this means is that we're stepping into a co-evolutionary relationship between seed and context. This is what some folk refer to as seeds as messengers of deep incarnation. And it's a classic example of how when we start paying attention to the way plants respond to climactic conditions, in particular difficult climactic conditions, what we're often alerted to is the presence of an intensified selection event that can massively accelerate the ability of plants to adapt to local conditions. I've seen this in my previous work in this part of the world, working, for example, with Brassica rapers, which run to seed early in February in greenhouses. One can save seed on them, put them in flats, grow them up, grow the seed up in flats, check germination levels, begin to really develop a picture of how that plant population is performing in a flat, and then integrate that into planting strategies in fall, grow crops through winters, do the same thing again, and essentially what that affords is the ability to powerfully accelerate the ability of a plant population to settle in and really become a resilient, highly productive source of food. Okay, that's it from California.